This is Stories from Palestine podcast, episode 6. Thank you for tuning in. It was a bit of a hectic week for me. I had to do an exam and a presentation for the tour guide studies, and the children were at home most of the time. First, only one of them due to a teacher who was infected with the coronavirus, and then the other one as well because of the snow. Yeah, it snowed in Palestine. It doesn't happen very often, so everyone was quite excited. But also quite a lot of road accidents happened because the roads here and the vehicles are not really prepared for snowfall. And most public schools are also not well equipped for the cold. And even with a little snowfall or even with some rain, electricity often cuts. So the Palestinian Ministry of Education decided to close the schools for 2 days. And then we heard that other teachers also had been infected with the coronavirus. So now the school is completely back on Zoom. And as I'm recording this today, it was my daughter's 7th birthday, Louisa. For those of you who have listened to season 1 of this podcast, you had about 18 lessons of Arabic words with her and my son Hadi. I decided not to continue for now, because it wasn't always easy to catch the children in, let's say, the right mood for it. So unless by popular overwhelming demand you ask me to start again, I will do season 2 without the Arabic classes and maybe resume again in another season. But yeah, so today was really nice but very intense with all the aunts and uncles and cousins, like a really Palestinian style birthday. And in the midst of all of this, I managed to record a very inspiring and I think uplifting podcast episode with George Zaidan. He's one of the founders and motors behind the Right to Movement. And I even managed to catch the Right to Movement runners when they returned from an early morning run in the Maghrour Valley. So you will hear some of them in short snippets interviews in the podcast. If you prefer to read along, you can find the full transcript of this podcast on the website. It took me about 4 hours this time to get the transcript corrected because, it doesn't always recognize all the words, especially that many words are in Arabic and many names. So I really hope that some of you appreciate it. Let me know if you use it. It would be great for me to know if it's actually useful to work on these transcripts or not. And now let's listen to George Zaidan from the Right to Movement. George, thank you very much for being on the podcast. You are one of the initiators of the Right to Movement and also one of the most active members. But before we start talking about the Right to Movement, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
My name is George Zaidan. I'm a Palestinian from, shouldn't be a surprise from the title of the podcast. I grew up in the old city of Jerusalem. I went to school in the old city of Jerusalem, graduated from Collège des Frères, a French high school at the New Gate. Some exceptional experience that I wouldn't trade off for anything. My father is from Beit Jala, so I grew up living in Beit Jala as well. It's about a 6-mile trip between Beit Jala and Jerusalem, which I used to take daily to commute to school. It sounds like a basic, easy trip, but it was not. It included a lot of challenges and checkpoints and adventures, as I like to call it. I had the opportunity to get a scholarship to finish my BA in Murfreesboro University in North Carolina in business administration. And a few years later, I was able to secure a Fulbright scholarship that granted me an opportunity to complete my master's degree at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles at the School of Public Policy. I started an internship in 2011, actually, with a Danish nonprofit called Danish Church Aid in their office in Jerusalem. And currently, I'm a program manager managing a program focusing on youth, media, youth, community tourism in Jerusalem. As you also mentioned, I'm here to talk to you about what we do in Right to Movement, which I happen to be involved in it since almost 8 years now, and it's one of the most exciting projects in Palestine.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Right to Movement? What is it? What do you do? What kind of activities? How did it come about? And what are we talking about? I mean, we all have the right to movement. So what is that?
It was an initiative that started with a group of Danish and Palestinian volunteers The idea was to use running to highlight the issues and the restrictions imposed on Palestinian movement due to the Israeli occupation through long distance running. It was mainly that we found out that there's no official marathon in Palestine. And we thought this would be a great opportunity to mobilize people from all over the world, Palestinians indeed, to come together on this day and focus or emphasize on the message of right to movement as a basic human right that we in Palestine were missing, all Palestinians miss, whether you live in Gaza and you're not allowed to leave Gaza, whether you live in the West Bank and you cannot commute between Palestinian cities, whether your wife is from Jerusalem and you can't go visit her family, or you can't live together in Jerusalem, and whether you're as children, you need to go to school. Everybody has his own story, Palestinian with right to movement. So we started by trying to find the route for the marathon in Bethlehem. And what was interesting is that we could not find the needed distance to complete a full marathon, which is 26.2 miles or 42.195 kilometers. So in order to finish the marathon that we start organizing, you have to do the same route 4 times. So you start from point A to point B and back to point A and back to point B again and back to point A. So it really resembles the story of right to movement for Palestinians, because it emphasizes on why we don't have our own land under our control, why we can't move in our own land freely. And that's where we try to use the marathon to bring attention to this. The track of the marathon itself also resembles the right to movement. You know, when you run, you pass by refugee camps, by Israeli checkpoints, by the wall, by land that has been or threatened to be confiscated by Israeli settlements. So it's really the same way we go to school, the same way we go to church, the same way we go to a wedding, the same way you go to work. It's the same way when you run. This is what you experience.
So, how was it not possible to do a full 42K marathon in one stretch?
The challenge is that, the Palestinian territories are classified as Area A, B, C. So in Bethlehem, we could not find the stretch needed to finish a marathon under the Palestinian control or in Area A. You will have to go into Area B or C, which requires coordination with Israel, which they wouldn't grant, first of all, and it's not something. Project will be vulnerable at the mood of any Israeli soldier who would like to stop this huge event. And it's really the same way we live. Most of our life is concentrated within Area A. That's where we have the ability to organize and to control what happens in these areas, to secure it for running. Running is something very sensitive security wise. You have to block the roads, you have to do stuff like this. So in order to do this, you will have to have jurisdiction over the land, and it's only possible in Area A.
Do you have any idea how much of the West Bank is Area A and how much is under Israeli control?
I'm familiar with Area C. It comes down to maybe 60% of the West Bank. And the challenge is that there's no connectivity between these areas. So it could be that in one city, in the middle of the city, it's Area A, and then all the suburbs are Area C. And then when you travel to another Palestinian city, you will have to go through Area C and B. So it makes the security and the feeling of safety in these areas very weak.
When you started organizing this marathon, first of all, you wanted to create a sports event, I guess, for local Palestinians, but in the same time, you have this message. How do you feel that you managed to get your message across, and to whom?
That's a very important question, Crystal. To be honest, what we were thinking in the beginning, and it was not me or any of the other Palestinians, it was actually the Danish partners that emphasized on the idea of, everything that happens in Palestine is always happening for solidarity. So it's okay that it's not good enough because we're under occupation. That's a standard perspective on everything, whether it's sports, medicine, administration, just civil service, anything. What they emphasized on is organize a professional marathon. The same way you run a marathon in Amsterdam, the same way you run a marathon in Berlin, the same way you run a marathon in South Africa or Tokyo. So something professional. Even the fees were professional fees, like you pay $80 to sign up as an international in the race, because we're giving you everything that other international races are giving you. And that was one important aspect of bringing in new blood to Palestine. And I say this because I love solidarity projects, but they're always preached to the same choir. And what we were able to do with our project is reach out to a lot of people who have not been exposed to Palestine before. Maybe they're not interested in politics. Maybe they just haven't had a chance to be exposed to it. When we invite them here or recruit or market it as a sports event, sports destination, then we're able to increase their knowledge and showcase the Palestinian reality of living under occupation and the limitation of movement. And that was the whole concept of how we want to do it. So it was also done in a Palestinian way, in professional but Palestinian way. What I mean about it, when you run in the Chicago Marathon, they will give you energy gels. When you run in Palestine, we'll give you fresh dates from Jericho. When you run in Europe or you run in Latin America in a race, they're probably dancing samba or tango on the stations. We had Dabke performing at the break stations. So we had to do our own culture, revive our own story, which gave the race its special touch, as in every other part of the world. But we have a lot of ways to make it creative here, which was fascinating. The first 3 years, we had 600 runners, a small race. Half of them were internationals. Over 4 years, the last edition we organized, we had 4,600 runners. An increase of 4,000 runners, where almost 1,200 were internationals. We're very, very proud of the percentage of women participants in the race. It ranged from the beginning from 36% to the last year about 48% of the participants. And this is really due to a lot of effort from many different organizations. We're not taking credit for this by ourselves, but we believe that we're one of the first motors behind this movement that inspires Palestinian women to do sports in the street, to run together with men in equal numbers in Palestinian streets. So through what we do on the weekly basis in our running groups, the running groups are a byproduct of Right to Movement. So they go hand in hand with the marathon. When we started organizing the marathon, we emphasized on the importance of developing a culture of running behind it. At the moment, we have 7 groups all over Palestine, in Haifa and in Jaffa as well, where each group is led by a female and male leader. And through social media, we promote activities, runs, exercises, yoga classes, hikes. Everybody's a volunteer. And these activities are promoted to encourage people to come together. The idea is that, first of all, we create a happy lifestyle in Palestine. We create a community. Some people come to run, some people come for walks, some people come to lose weight, some people come to find a wife. Traditionally, you will go to the mosque to do that, or the church to do that. We gave a different alternative, a cool alternative for it. And it's totally fine. People will come for all aspects, and we have a good time, and we create an atmosphere that is welcoming Palestinian women doing sports in the street. And this is very, very important, because what we learned over the years is by being consistent in what we do, we were able to, I'm not going to claim that we reached the moon, but with our consistency, we were able to normalize our behavior, at least in the areas where we were. I would say that prior to our groups, it was much harder for Palestinian women to do exercise in the street, to run or walk. And at least in the areas where our groups are functioning, it became an accepted habit. And that's very exciting for us. We think it's a great achievement. And we totally believe it's a result of our consistency, of being there same time, same day, every week, rain or not rain, we're always there. We're always active. We're always promoting it happily on social media and trying to get people to come on behind it.
Hey, and George, I see your posts on the Right to Movement Facebook page, but basically when you promote there's weekly indoors practice, but then there's also outdoors activities, but it's always the same 2 locations, Kremesan and the Maghrour.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Again, it ties back directly to our ability to feel safe to go on our own land. I'll give you an example. Last week, this Saturday, we were in Kremesan and we went for a walk. I mean, we were 20 people, maybe 5 of us were jogging, 7 or 8 were running really fast, and the rest we were walking. There was an Israeli police car, and everybody got furious. Everybody was just stressed out. They were just there. It's Area A. Part of it is Area A, part of it is Area C, actually. But they were there, and everybody wasn't comfortable, and some people left. And these are the areas that we feel it's nice enough for us to have to change the environment. You don't want to be around cars, you don't want to be in a busy city. So we go to the outskirts of the city. But then when the Israeli army is there, it just makes the experience a bit. It gives us unneeded feelings in where we're going, what we're going to do. So as I said, each group does its own program. So in Bethlehem, for instance, where I manage the group together with other leaders, we have an indoor training on Tuesdays, and we have a weekend run. So every Tuesday we have a fitness, strength, cardio training in the evening, and then in the weekend, sometimes we have an early Saturday morning running exercise or an afternoon running exercise. Other cities have their own program. To me, what's the beautiful part is that you could do an event with Right to Movement every day of the week in a different city. So there's always something on Mondays in Jerusalem, Tuesdays Bethlehem and Ramallah, and Wednesday in Jaffa, on Thursdays in Ramallah, on Saturday morning in Jerusalem, on Sunday evening. Half of the groups gather on Sunday evening. So there's wherever you are, you could actually take a trip in Palestine and participate in a class every day in a different city.
And how did you go about it during the corona pandemic, during the lockdowns?
In the first few months, we decided to do this virtual training program where every day we'll offer a training. And every day it's a new person from a different group. It was actually exciting because the people from Bethlehem who cannot go to Jaffa were able to train with the Jaffa trainer, and were able to get to meet each other with the Jaffa group, and vice versa. So we were able to create actually and meet each other more, because it's hard when it's not COVID, because everybody is in his city, and most of the people in the West Bank do not have the ability to go join the Jaffa and Haifa group.
Yeah, that was really special. I remember joining a few of them because it was hard for me with the kids around. But training with people from all over Palestine online from your own room.
And internationally as well. And internationally, because it gave us the chance to people who have been part of what we do, and they really like. That's actually something very special about what we do. Anybody who lived in Bethlehem or Ramallah, for example, and participated with us for a year, automatically becomes a supporter and somebody that engages with what we do constantly.
Yeah.
And these people had the chance to join these trainings during the pandemic because, hey, why not? They were. So we had the trainings here, and we had some people from Chicago on different time zone, totally bananas, or Chile joining the trainings. So that was cool.
There were some upsides for this pandemic. Good morning, Yassine.
Good morning.
You just came from a run with the Right to Movement?
Yeah, of course. It's very good today. Maybe 6 kilo.
You did 6 kilo. Wow. How many people?
12 people.
Do you do it every week?
Yeah. Every week we run in Makhrur, Remizan, Bethlehem. It's good.
Nice. Yatik al-afia. Did you just come from the run?
Yes.
Do you do it often?
Every Saturday, sometimes Sundays or whenever they decide.
How many people were you today? Do you know?
Approximately 15, something like that, more or less. But often there are more people, especially when we run in the afternoon, because then they'll be done with their jobs and school. So, yeah.
And how important is it for you to have this opportunity to run with the Right to Movement?
It is liberating, really, because often we are bounded by rules, by the Israelis, by the occupation. There aren't many places to run anymore. Even here, there was a point where they closed Al-Makhrur, so we weren't even able to come here. So any chance I get to come with the Right to Movement to run in Kremzan, in Makhrur, any other place, I'll go definitely. Yani. It is very important, very liberating. It makes us feel more free in our own country, which is weird, but yani, that's the truth, unfortunately.
Yeah, because when you say they closed it for a while, what does that mean?
Well, it meant that us as Palestinians, we couldn't come here for political reasons, or sometimes there are soldiers, so yani, we can't pass really, or the reasons sometimes they just feel like it. So, yeah.
If there were no walls and no checkpoints, and you were to pick a run, where would you go?
Haifa, Jaffa, a run by the beach, that would be great. Our country is amazing. Palestine has some of the most incredible views of all times. We have the beach, we have hills, we have mountains, But they took it all. It's all within the wall. So it's very rare for us to go there. But if I had the chance, I'd go on a daily basis. It's actually very close to go to Jerusalem if there was no wall. So, yeah.
Did you run this morning with the Right to Movement?
Yes, I did.
And where are you from?
I'm from Bet Safafa.
And if you are from Beit Safafa, you come all the way in the morning just for this run. So it must be important for you.
Yes, actually, it's very important. It's not my first time or the last time. I've been like running for 4 years with the Right to Movement.
Did you ever run the marathon that they organized in Bethlehem?
I only did like 2 halves, and I was preparing for the full marathon. Then Corona came, so it wasn't very ideal for me.
And how was it to run that half marathon?
It's very challenging because when you run in the refugee camps, you expect every other obstacle that might have and that might happen to you. And you can like crack your ankle in some tunnels or something. So it's not very ideal, but you know, it's our daily routine. So we're very used to it.
One more chance.
What are you doing?
We're preparing to make shakshuka after the run.
What is shakshuka?
It's Palestinian. I'm not going to claim it's Palestinian. It's very debatable. Could be Tunisian. I think the last I heard it's Tunisian. That's the most thing I feel it's true. Like I can associate with it. Basically, tomato paste, strong tomato paste. We bring our own tomato and then a little bit of garlic and onion. Some people put onion, some people do not. And then eggs. You cook it together. It becomes like a nice paste. It's exciting.
Oh, okay. So you're breaking the wood for the bonfire. Musa is cutting the onions that they are going to use to prepare the shakshuka. And then they are coming in with the bandora now with the tomatoes. And they're preparing a bonfire. So after the run, there is a fresh shakshuka breakfast.
بقطع اخر واحد بقطع ايده مع
بكون موسى قطع 20 وحده
استنى عليك بعد استنى بكون اخر واحد
بتزامش سكر بولا بلاش كله
ازاي شوفي لي اكيد قديش ده
غريبه
هي خربانه
بقول لك انت رياضي بلزمش سكر
I saw you this morning. I was sitting in my car waiting for the runners to come back to interview for the podcast. And I saw you arriving on your bike. And I was like, wow, this woman is coming here on her own by her bike. And I am Dutch, so I love biking. I used to do everything by bike. So I wonder, do you do this a lot? Do you do this on your own?
Well, I just got my bike last year, probably in July or June. I usually go like inside the city, like to buy grocery and stuff. This is the first time I come here, so I just wanted to try, because it's a mountain bike, so I wanted to try the feeling of mountain biking, and I actually loved it.
And you know the people from the Right to Movement, and you knew that they were running, or it was by coincidence?
I'm a Right to Movement member, so I've almost 7 years now. So I knew, but I came late.
Yeah, it's Saturday morning, very early, I understand. So you've been running also the marathon?
Yes. I did 3 half marathons, or 3, I think, and 1 full marathon.
Wow.
Yeah.
When was the full marathon?
2016 in Beirut.
Oh, not here, in Beirut.
Yeah, I did the Beirut marathon.
Did you go as an individual or with a group?
No, with Right to Movement, yeah.
As a group, you signed up and you all went together.
We went as a delegation.
What is Right to Movement for you in your life?
I've always loved running, but as a kid, I was a bit intimidated to go on the streets as a girl because, you know, the mentality here about a girl running in the streets, which I think has changed a bit. So when I heard about Right to Movement, I was like, that was when I was in university. I decided to join. And ever since, I haven't been intimidated to go and run, even on my own in the streets. So for me, I feel that it's an empowerment source for me. Yeah, I can just do what I love without caring about what people think. Yeah.
يعطيك العافية. Hey, George, you also wrote an article for 972 magazine, and it was called The Palestinians' Ultimate Guide to Crossing an Israeli Checkpoint. And this is also something about the movement and the right movement and the checkpoints that stop your movement. Can you share with us a few of these guidelines?
Yeah, happily. I mean, it was a bit of a sarcastic attempt to highlight, what we have to go through constantly at Israeli checkpoints. Not everybody know this, but some of the Palestinians are able to, like myself, are able to drive into Israel in their cars. The roads that we take to drive into Israel are the same roads as the settlers take. So what happens is that your mission would be is to come off on the checkpoint as a settler. That would be your best way at getting through the checkpoint without being stopped. Over the years, every Palestinian who has this ability have developed his own skills of how to cross a checkpoint without being stopped. Being stopped is not technically at the checkpoint, it's not technically the worst that could happen to a Palestinian, Like compared to most of the Palestinians would not be able to, would die, would love to, would do anything to be able to cross that checkpoint, even stopping or not. But it's quite annoying and it wastes your time. And it's, when you're driving and you see a car ahead of you with an Israeli in it and he's not being stopped, a Jewish Israeli is not being stopped, you feel kind of, I don't want to be stopped either. So you start developing these skills. And I've had the opportunity to have experience on how to do this, learn by doing. So I was trying to tell people what some of the things that you could do. And few of the most interesting ones is raising a pet. I say this because, for some reasons, most of the Israelis, I'm not going to claim to speak on their behalf, but what we learn also from living very close to them is that they downgrade us. So having a pet is not something that they think is very Arabic. So if you want a nice way to cross a checkpoint without being stopped, you want to have a nice dog next to you. And yeah, I've had many people do this, and you fly straight forward because they wouldn't just assume that an Arabic person will have a dog.
That you would be having a dog next to you.
Yeah, you don't want to have a cat because it's not very visible. And you don't want to have a very cute dog because that might give the soldier a reason to stop the car to play with the dog.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't want to do that. So that's what I was I was telling people. And then, something funny is that, some Arabic norms is that we're very friendly. We talk to everybody in the street. So if you're in your car and you're driving in the city, you wave to 50 people in the car.
Yeah.
So you'll always find Arabic drivers waving their hand just sitting outside the car, pointing nowhere, just sitting outside the car.
Window open,
pointing their hand stretched outside the car. So what I recommend people to do is you don't want to do this. You want to make sure to close the windows all the time. I mean, it's not very useful because you wouldn't be able to greet people anymore. But in this circumstance, close the window. You will see this actually a lot of Palestinians.
At least when you are approaching the checkpoint,
Exactly.
You will close the window.
Opening the window and waving, like stretching your arm outside, will definitely get you stopped. That's what some of the things I would do. And then if women are in the car and they're smoking, that's also something that will get you around. Because again, it's the same reason as the first advice, because Palestinian women, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and use your podcast, Crystal, to recommend Palestinian women to smoke.
Be careful.
But at least I mean, it's a useful way to get through the checkpoint because again, it wouldn't be an Arabic woman if she's smoking in the car. So I'm, yeah. And yeah, these are just like some of the examples, but they all fall together with the message of right to movement, in what we do. And what we do in right to movement is really beyond description in a way, because it's just an exciting project. I tell people one of the main objectives that we come to learn about what we do is connectivity between Palestinians. Many people in Hebron would not have ever had the opportunity to have friends in Haifa if it wasn't for the group, to have the opportunity to connect with. And we think, for example, or Jaffa, people at Jaffa wouldn't have had the opportunity to connect with people from Bethlehem or Ramallah or Jericho. So we feel what we do enable us to create, often Palestinians, because we're very segregated, we tend to forget, or the days pass on and move forward, and you end up caring about your personal life and personal problems. And then you forget that connectivity. You just start losing it. One of the most beautiful things is that disconnection between Palestinians, and creating more and more channels of communication that they learn about our life, we learn about their life. We defeat stereotypes. We put stereotypes on each other. We defeat these stereotypes. We become friends with people. It's just so exciting. Some of the things we're mostly proud of is when we get people from the groups to participate in international marathons. We have actually had a women delegation, a complete women delegation, participating in Amsterdam half marathon a few years ago. We've been in over 20 races globally. We have been in Chicago, in San Francisco, in Santiago, in Zanzibar, in Cape Town, in Beirut. We have been in Germany, in Cologne. We've been in Reggio Emilia, in Italy. We have been in Copenhagen. We've been in Edinburgh. We've been in Wales, in London, and all over the world. We've had the chance to send runners, and that's been really a great way to communicate about what we do and build grassroots connection with groups globally through sports again.
Is there any good media coverage about that?
We have been covered when it happens. We have been covered. We have had quite an exciting days with it, and it's the beautiful part of it is that it's also self-sponsored. In Palestine, whatever you do, you're always required to receive donation from some way or another, and that's totally understandable in many ways. But the beauty of what we do is that we're a grassroots volunteer organization, that we don't take money from any organization. We're not an NGO, we're not registered, and we want to stay this way. It's beautiful because it's less of a headache in a way, but the most exciting part about it is that we maintain our credibility and we maintain our opinion in what we want to do and our direction. How do we raise money to finance such activities? We organize hikes, we organize dinner parties, we sell t-shirts. Everybody who wants a Right to Movement t-shirt can contact you, Crystal, and they can put me in touch with me if they would like to buy one. And then it helps us promote what we do, promote the group, and also raise some money for the group activity. So when we go to Belfast, for example, or to Derry in Ireland, we connect with a group of any similar group, running group, or any group that will help us, for example, find a place to stay. So here we saved half of the cost. Then we start selling t-shirts and doing the hikes all over the year. And we say, okay, we'll sponsor half of the ticket and every participant must pay the other half. So it's in a way cumulative effort to collect money to make that trip happen. And we think that's the most exciting part of what we do. It's really a volunteer grassroots organization.
I will make sure to post some links on the show notes of the podcast so that people can also go and check out your Facebook page and website, Instagram, and so on.
That would be amazing.
George, before we finish, I'm just curious in general about sports in Palestine, if you know anything about it, because what are the types of sports that are popular, and is there any leagues or any people that do sports on higher levels?
Sure. I play in the Palestinian Excellent Basketball League. It's called Excellent in Palestine. It wouldn't be excellent in anywhere else. But it's we have actually a very decent basketball team. As we speak now, the Palestinian basketball national team is getting ready to leave to Jordan tomorrow to participate in the qualifications for FIBA, the Federation of Basketball Asia Cup.
Wow.
We will be playing 3 games with Kazakhstan, I think, and 2 games with Jordan and 1 game with Sri Lanka. So we'll be playing these games in the upcoming 2 weeks, and they're very important because Palestine, we need a win or 2 wins, I think, we'll make it to the FIBA Asia Cup, which we have played in 2015 and done a big surprise by beating one of the best Asian teams with NBA players on it, the Philippines. That was an incredible day for all Palestinian basketball players. We have a league for women. We have a basketball league for women. We have quite good football league that is paid. It's the only league that is paid, the Excellent League. Every other league is a hobby league. So I play in the Excellent Basketball League. It's for free. You don't get paid. Only the men's Excellent Soccer or Football League gets paid. Our basketball team is probably the most achieving in terms of achievements. Our football team is decent, but they haven't had a lot of successes lately. And we have some individual successes that happened in judo, in running, in swimming. So it's not the big scene, but it's growing.
Yeah.
It's growing. I've recently been exposed to more and more academies for teaching kids sports at young age, like soccer and football and volleyball and tennis. And I think that will uplift the level of the games in the future.
Yeah. And I can see on Facebook all the posts about all the different hikes that are being organized in Palestine. And I think that hiking and walking in general is also something that over the past years has been really growing and becoming more successful, or people are more interested in that than before.
We have a really beautiful hiking trail in Palestine that we in Right to Movement constantly. It's one of the ways how we bring all the groups together. We've had hikes with 300 people. It's a bit crazy, but it's also fun.
Wow, 300. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a hiking trail in Palestine that is mostly known to be for tourists as Masar Ibrahim. At the moment, the name is changed to the Palestinian Heritage Trail. I actually recommend you, Crystal, to have somebody from the trail on your podcast. It's a 330-kilometer hiking trail. The most interesting aspect for me in it is that it's very diverse. You know, some of it is deserty, some of it is mountains, water, green. You're exposed to different landscapes and different kind of food, different kind of atmosphere or weather. I've hiked the whole trail, not in the same trip. I've had the chance to do the whole trail in different days. So that was exciting.
I'm so jealous. Wow. That's my dream, is to do the whole trail. I'm all the time telling myself when the kids grow up a little bit,
Yeah.
either without them or with them, I want to do the whole trail. Wow. Yeah, I will do an episode about I already talked to George Rishmawi about it.
Sweet.
I have another question.
Please.
I've heard many foreigners and also definitely Israelis say that if Palestinians had the freedom of movement, that this would be a security threat to Israel. What would you say to these people?
I will say to them that to me, that's entirely a false argument. And the proof is that any Palestinian can still go into Israel at the moment. If they really wanted to do harm, they could also do so. The truth is that, we want to live in peace. We want to achieve our freedom, our just peace. As I told you, what I wrote, the article that you referred to, just shows you how simple it is for anybody to cross in a car and get into Israel. Another example, what happened in COVID was very interesting. During the first closure of the COVID, the Palestinian Authority announced that it prevented the workers who work in Israel from accessing Israel because there was a high number of COVID cases in Israel. So what the Israeli authorities did to counter this move and bring the workers to work in Israel is announce or open places in the siege, in the separation wall, or just open it without any security so people can cross legally or illegally and just access their workplace. And that just shows you how it's kind of weren't you afraid of the Palestinians that you're talking about in the media that they will cross? Why did you understand what I mean? And if they built that wall for security purposes, they didn't need to take with it further and further Palestinian land, They've decided to build it inside Palestinian land, cut Palestinian cities from each other.
Yeah, it's very clear. When they opened it, they wanted to have the workers because they need them for their construction sites.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the whole argument about security wasn't there anymore.
Exactly.
So if you wanted to go for a run, you could technically run from Bethlehem to Jerusalem if you really wanted to. You could.
True.
In few hours. I remember I had a friend, he was from a village near Ramallah, and it relates to what you said before. He was a biker and he would put on his biking gear, go on his bike, and then he would cross the checkpoint, and the Israeli soldiers would never even stop him because they could not imagine that a Palestinian would go on a bike ride crossing that checkpoint to go towards Tel Aviv. But he did, and he did it many times, and they never stopped him because of that stereotypical idea that the soldiers had of what a Palestinian looks like.
Exactly.
What are the activities that are on your schedule for the spring? Do you have anything special coming up?
We will keep monitoring the COVID situation. One of the things we've been doing right before COVID, we started doing, and we want to continue doing when we're able to, is we organize sports activities with cleaning. So we get people to come together and clean a whole area, few kilometers. While people are running, we provide everybody with gloves and bags, and we say, "Hey, we're collecting trash. It's a lot of squats. People do it while they're running, while they're jogging, and we're able to clean up whole areas." So we plan to organize some of these few events more like this after the corona, or maybe also in the spring if we're able to do so.
Do you call it plugging?
We call it plugging. We learned that it started in Sweden, so somewhere. We saw the video on social media and we said, okay, we'll do the same. And it's been exciting.
It's great, George. That means that once the world opens up again and people want to come and visit Palestine, they will find it clean at least.
I wouldn't make this promise,
Oh.
Crystal. I mean,
It can only be a disappointment, yeah.
your listeners can hold you accountable to this, not me.
Yeah. Now I have to search for areas where to take them. Yeah. Thank you very much, George. That was really inspiring. I will post links in the podcast show notes and on the website so that people can learn more. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Me too. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you for listening. If you want to order a t-shirt of the Right to Movement, then go quickly to the show notes of this podcast or look on my website, storiesfrompalestine.info, and on the bottom of the blog that goes with this episode, you can find the email address of George and order your t-shirt with him. On the website, you can also find some photos, and I will post also on my social media, photos of the run, photos of the shakshuka, photos of the Right to Movement in action. And for those of you who consider themselves super fans, from now on, I will always post some unique content on my Ko-fi page. That is the platform where I can receive donations towards the podcast. And last week, I uploaded there a 4-minute video with some extra content that was not available in the podcast. And this week, I will upload a very special photo of myself during the Bethlehem Marathon in 2019, and you can see what I did when we passed the Israeli military checkpoint. Curious? Then go to kofi.com/storiesfrompalestine and you will find that photo there. You will find the link to the Ko-fi page in the show notes, and it is really helpful and appreciated when people make a donation, because it's currently the only source of income as long as tourism hasn't recovered. So that's it for now, and I hope you will listen again next week.